Well, welcome to the show, David Ling. You've had an incredible career in hockey, 20 years. Could you take me back to your very first hockey memory? Where did it all start for you?
Well, growing up in Canada, I'm in small province in Canada, and every kid plays hockey, and every parent gives their kid a hockey stick before they give them diapers. But I had I have an older brother who was into hockey, 2 years older, so I got into it at a very young age, sometimes forcibly by him, but also, you're looking up to him. So I got onto my skates probably when I was 3 and never stopped.
From that point, from learning at that age, at the age of 3 on the skates, you get to the draft in 1993 and you're picked by the Quebec Nordics. What was that journey like from basically a toddler to the age of 18? What were you doing and what sacrifices had you made to get yourself to that point?
Well, there's, growing up in a small town, there wasn't a lot of senior teams that you could really watch or swag to play on, but you'd watch it on TV and have that, but it was a little farther away. And, it wasn't until 14, 15 that you realized that, maybe I can go play with these guys and whatnot. But the sacrifices that we had to give up were, you're training 6-7 days a week, and I had to leave my home and go 10 to 15 hours away and live in different cities when I was 15, 16 years old. You're giving up your friends, you're giving up your family, and they're still there supporting you, but it's not the day-to-day that you're giving up, and you're a young kid, and you have to grow up really fast. And looking back, sometimes you wish you didn't grow up as fast as you did, and other times you wish, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, did you think that you kind of missed out on things because, your friends, maybe they were out partying, or whereas you maybe had to knuckle down and get fit and stay fit?
Yeah, you know what, I did have a pretty good balance, but I always saw my childhood friends in the summertime, so I only had 2 or 3 months anyway with them, and so you did sacrifice that part where you were missing out. And my good friends when I was 12 and 13 are still my good friends, because the gap in between from 12 to 32, I was away, and I only got to come back and see these guys that I grew up with for 2 or 3 months. So yeah, you do sacrifice, and it's but I wanted to play. I still love the game, and I wouldn't want to do it any other way right now.
During that young period there, who was coaching you? Did you have an influential coach who really mentored you, or was it a selection of people that were helping you get to the higher level?
Well, yeah, I had one coach, Gary Agnew was his name, and he coached me 2 years when I was 17, 18, and he had a lot of confidence in me, which helped with my confidence on the ice. And he's one of those guys, but I leaned on my father and my brothers, for those times when you're away, and they were the consistent each year that they were always there. Teammates and coaches were coming and going, but those were the consistents that stayed.
Your father, he's a surgeon.
Yeah, he was an orthopedic surgeon. He did pass away, but he was an orthopedic surgeon.
I can imagine in that part of the world, he probably had a lot of hockey injuries to deal with in his job.
Yeah, and he kind of specialized in the knees and shoulders. So and those are the two main ones in the hockey. So he did see a lot of hockey, and he fixed the odd bone of mine too.
Was he a hockey player himself?
He did, but he didn't play pro. He did play university, but he didn't play pro. He was a hockey player. My mother was an athlete, and a combination of that.
And what did your mum do?
She was a nurse, so she did nursing in the hospital, and then she taught nursing at school.
But she was into sports as well?
Yeah, she came from a family of sports, and she actually played hockey before women really played hockey at the college level.
So when you were young, I'm guessing you were playing hockey a lot. Was there a team that you used to go to watch? Did you have a favourite team growing up?
I did, but we didn't have very high level. We had senior teams here that you looked up to as locals. But in the NHL, I looked up to Detroit Red Wings, because there actually was a guy on the team that was from my hometown. He wore number 17, and I tried to wear that number all going through, and I got to wear quite a bit.
So 18 years old, you get selected for the draft, in the draft, sorry. Could you believe that was happening? That's probably the dream for a lot of young players.
Yeah, it was exciting. It was surreal. You hear your name called, you've watched, we used to watch the drafts, for 10 years before, and you're like, it's your dream. You've announced it on the street, playing street hockey with the buddies that that first round pick. But so when it was done, it was surreal, and it was, there's memorable moments in the game, and being drafted, playing your first NHL game, scoring your first NHL goal. I rank up there as the top individual for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that time in your career, I was looking through the stats, your numbers really blew up, like early 90s. You were getting a lot of assists, a lot of goals, penalty infractions as well. But that was a great time. Why at that point, were you on a real high at the start of your career? Who was pushing you? Was it the team you were with? Was it the coach? Were you working extra hard in the background? Where did the success come from there?
So when I left here, you play junior, and when junior is 16 to 20, so that the first year you're a 16-year-old, the second year you're 17. So by the time you're 18, you're a little older, you have more confidence, and I think that I was surrounded by some good teammates, and we had some good teams, and I think being older and you're a good 16-year-old, but you're playing against 18, 19, 20-year-olds, so it doesn't show up as much as you are when you're 18. So I think the older you got at that level, the more it showed on the score sheet.
So what was it like when you played your first adult professional game of hockey? Was it a shock? I mean, when you get into the NHL, how much harder and how much of a step up is that?
Yeah, like when I turned pro at 20, I didn't play in the NHL till I was 22 a game or so. But my first game in the minors, I look back and people go, "Were you like, was that a dream come true?" And I remember feeling at that age with a little cockiness, thinking that I'm where I should be. But then you play your first game in the NHL, and you're like, "Wow, this was surreal." I didn't really get nervous before, and then you step on the ice with these guys, and I was nervous, I was shaking, I didn't feel sick, I couldn't sleep the night before. Like it's a real surreal, anxiety-filled, exciting time, and it was awesome. Like I look back and it feels like it's in slow motion, and at the time it was in fast forward.
And how did your first game go?
It was good. It was my dad was there, and my family was there, but I remember it goes by so fast. You get out there and you're nervous for about 5 seconds, and then your skill and confidence and that muscle memory takes over, and you kind of fit in. I kind of say everyone's in the right place in the NHL. Everyone passes the puck in the right places, so it's almost easier to play and harder to produce. So you don't show up as much, but it's easier to play because everyone's in the right places and that.
Do you put pressure on yourself when you go into games like that? You really want to perform well, and does that does that hinder you at all? I mean, actually, here's a better question. You were talking about the nervousness. Do you think you're expending a lot of energy before the game because of nerves? And
I chalk it up as and maybe it's wrong and scientifically not true, but I always said nerves are normal, trying to trick your brain that these are normal feelings. They're going to go away and you're going to play well. And yeah, there's things that we would do at the rink. We'd have to get there 2 hours before the game, so there's a lot of time just sitting there. So you would find ways, one, to think about what you had to do, but also two, to get rid of, not think about it too much, so you didn't get too nervous and you didn't waste too much energy. So there was you'd read the newspaper, go for a walk, train, warm up, have a coffee, different things just to keep your mind away from just sitting there going, am I going to fail? Am I going to fail? Am I going to fail? Am I going to fall? So, because it takes a lot out of you.
David, I know I was a really keen amateur boxer when I was younger, and what the emotions you're talking about is exactly what I used to go through as well. I used to convince myself I was going to lose. I would just I'd convince myself that my hand was too injured, and then I would win. But then it was so silly. You have all these scenarios go through your head that you think this is going to happen and that, and then ultimately something completely different happens in the end. It's just totally different.
And I appreciate your sport, because I've been told 24 hours before that I had to fight the next night, and it's not a great feeling, because every every scenario, like you said, goes through your head. Am I going to get hit with a right and get knocked out on TV? Like, that's the worst thing. I don't mind getting knocked out, but it can't be on TV.
No, I know, David. You've got some. There's some excellent highlights of you on YouTube. My favorite was the Derek Morris right hand. What a right hand that was! And he's maybe you're friends with the guy now. I don't know, but he didn't take that hand well. He just kind of wanted to get away.
I don't know, but if you watch it, he got cocky and he tried to grab both my arms with one hand and left that and kind of leaned into that punch. So it was kind of like, I don't know if he didn't know or he, got overconfident or whatnot. And he by the time I hit him, he was leaning almost into it.
This is what I can't get right. I mean, from a boxing background, where you place your feet is so important, right? It's such a intricate thing, and when you go over it and over it, and you want to have the absolute best footwork, you're on ice skates. How on earth do you get any purchase, any kind of like anything in it? Do you know? It must be. Is there a technique?
Well, it's the grabbing hand. So you're grabbing and pulling and using your balance. Well, as a boxer, there's no grab hand. You're just throwing both hands, and there's no grab. So you got to have your feet and move with the punch. We got to use a pull and punch at the same time. So you're pulling and pushing with the hand that's holding on with the other. With
so
the
do you
jersey.
actually? There's a kind of an accepted technique to use.
Yeah, and it's because if you didn't have a hold on him and you're on skates and you missed the punch, you'd fall down, because that's just the way the skates would make you fall down. So it's the other hand almost serves as a balance and a guide. So when you are punching, you can't stand back and throw both hands.
No.
You got to grab and throw and then let go and grab and throw. And
how many fights did you have in hockey, do you think?
Oh, I would say 150.
150?
Yeah.
And who was? I need to know who was the hardest hitter. Who was the one that you just didn't enjoy?
Well, I didn't fight too many guys over and over, but I do remember I got hit with a punch in a game from this guy named Jim Vandermeer, who was with the Flyers, and he hit me with a punch, and I remember feeling it ringing in my head, and it was a feeling I never really had before, where you could almost feel it ringing. I didn't go down, and I didn't feel shitty after, but at the time that it hit me, normally you don't feel it while you're fighting, but I remember feeling it going over. That one caught me good.
Was there any players that you played against that you would consider to be just the best player that you've ever played against? Any guys that you just really respected, or you feared? You knew you were playing against them, and you thought this is going to be a hard game today.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of the players in the NHL are so much better than even the lower levels of pro. There's so much better. But I remember, and I played against all those guys in the NHL at the time, and the top guys in each team were unbelievable. But I played with a guy on my team, and you're watching him day in and day out. With Nash, he was a first pick in the draft, and he ended up having a good career. And he, watching him day in, day out, and the skill level and the progress and getting better each day, even though he was really good, was more because you get to see that at a daily rate, that it was more impressive.
Does that lift everybody in the team? When you have a player like that, is everyone's game comes up with them?
Yeah, when those good players, they're usually the leaders on the team, and when they go, the refs fall off. So it's there's some awful good players. I remember I was in Dallas training camp, and Mike Modano and Bud Hall were going down a 2-on-1, and everyone else on the ice that are the peers that play in the same level were in awe, like how good they were and how fast they were and how hard they passed the puck. And that's guys in the NHL looking at other guys in the NHL. So there definitely is a pecking order too.
What's the difference between those people? Like, do they live a different life in some way that makes them so good? Is it just raw talent, or is there a lot of extra work going on with them?
Well, I think 95% of the time that those guys are the hardest workers, even though there's a lot of it that I think is born talent. But I think that like you look at Sidney Crosby in hockey, he's, one of the hardest working players. Connor McDavid, he's one of the hardest working players, and they're at the top of the game and they want to be better. Well, how do you get better than number one? But they still strive to be better than they were yesterday. And I think that is part of the competitiveness that you need to be a professional athlete. You need that. I need to be better, even though I'm good. I need to be better tomorrow, and I need to be better the next day, and I need to be better the next day. And how do I get better? And find the ways to get better. So it's that's a talent in its own. You hear so many times where someone goes, "Oh, he was unreal, but he didn't want to work hard." And I'm like, well, working hard, it has to be a talent, because you either do it or you don't. It's not it's a workable talent, and you're not born with it, but it's a talent. So
I think you're dead right there. That's the way you've lived, because you've had a 20-year career. That's some longevity. You must be keeping very fit, eating well. And
when I was younger, I partied and I lived hard, but I stayed in shape. I loved playing. I didn't find it work. I didn't find it hard work. I thought I was playing this game I was getting paid for, and I still play and stay in shape now, but I still play. I love playing. I just love the game. There's a lot of guys that, even I played with guys that played 10 years, and as soon as they quit, they threw their skates in the garbage and never played again. I love watching. I love playing, and I think part of it is that's why I didn't have any injuries, but also why I had some longevity is because I love the game so much.
Were you just lucky that you didn't have injuries? It must be, because it's such a high impact sport. You're going in hard on everybody. Everyone goes in hard on each other. How do you avoid injuries? Well,
I was lucky, because I especially back in the 90s and the 2000s, that I was a smaller player. But I think because I was smaller, my limbs weren't dangling around and getting hit by themselves. And like usually it's a knee on knee. I didn't put myself in those positions to go knee on knee to hurt your knee. But to play that long and not really have a bad injury, there's luck involved too.
You said you were a smaller player. What is it like now in hockey? Is it a physique that teams are looking for, or can you be a smaller player?
Yeah, now the game's speed. You have to be fast, and I remember hearing a stat that the smallest guy attended a NHL training camp. He was 5'6" and 140 pounds. So that size isn't a difference. You see the small players now that are so highly skilled and fast, and I think that's where the game has changed. It went from the game's so fast now, and the speed is a big difference. But I still believe that if you have two guys and one guy's 6 feet and the other guy's 5'9", and they're the exact same, you're taking the taller one. It's just a presence that it's almost, that's just the way it is. It's a presence where the bigger guy gives a more of a enemy from the other team. So I think it does add a little bit, but the smaller guy, if he's better, definitely has a chance.
The first time I went to watch ice hockey with my son, we went to see the Dundee Stars, and I don't know if you ever played against the Dundee Stars when you were in the UK. Yeah. So we went to see the Dundee Stars, and there was a guy who'd been sent off. He was standing there. What a size of a man! He was huge. This guy, obviously an enforcer. I mean, he's got skates on, but he was a big guy. And I tell you, I would not want to be having a fight with him. That's for sure.
Yeah, like they're into the 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" now, and that's without skates. Then you put another 2.5 inches at them. So they're big. There's some big boys now, and they used to be able to not be able to play, but now these 6'6" guys can skate and they have skill. So it's definitely changing.
It's a lot of weight to change direction with all that size. I would imagine.
I think that's one. They can't play as long either, because they do end up getting their limbs, because they're a lot longer and out into the open, and they get hit more and get injured a little bit more. But I would trade to be 6'6" for sure.
Yeah, it must be cool, to be quite tall. I'm 6'1", and it's useful because I'm losing all my hair on top, but nobody knows. So
yeah, no one can see.
Yeah. So David, what about life on the road? How did you end up you've played all over the world. You've played for a lot of teams, Russia, Europe. Was that through choice or just opportunity comes up, teams come looking? Why did you travel so much?
Well, the older you get, it becomes the opportunities get smaller and smaller, and it definitely becomes a business when you get into when you get older. You definitely want to make the most money you can, because you don't know you're going to play for 20 years. You might play for 2 more months or 6 more months or 6 years. So you want to, you get older, and your chances of making the NHL are a little bit or a lot less. And now you still want to play, but you want to make as much money as you can, because you do want to have something to fall back on. And so when I went to Russia, it was timing. I was getting pushed out of the NHL, and there was a lockout, and the money was there, and I took the opportunity and jumped.
What does that mean, a lockout?
Well, the lockout, the owners locked the players out. So the collective bargaining agreement, they couldn't come to an agreement. It was up, and they locked them out so that they couldn't play, and then until the agreement was signed.
Oh, I see. So, I mean, playing in Canada, then playing in Russia, was that a culture shock for you?
Definitely. And it was. I really enjoyed it. It got long. There was a lot of pros and cons. So, the architect in Moscow and St. Petersburg is like, the history is crazy. And, you come from Canada that's 150 years old to a place that's thousands of years old. It's pretty eye-opening. But, after that wears off, there's a lot of cons to living in places that, no one speaks your language. The food's not the same. They drive on the other side of the road, or the culture's 180 degrees the other way, and it takes some adapting, and there's a lot of headaches, and people say, oh yeah, you're making good money and you're playing in good leagues over there, but you're also spending 22 hours a day, a lot of times by yourself, not talking to many people. The internet sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. You can't
Okay.
you can't call home. So there's a lot of ups and downs, and it takes some heartache and loneliness, but you survive.
How do you even communicate with the players in the team? Are they predominantly Russian?
Yeah, we had a translator a couple of years, but when you're on the ice, you watch when they draw it on the board, and then you watch from the back of the line, and by the time you go, you figured it out, or a lot of the drills are the same, and the hockey language, even though if no one's talking, is pretty universal. So it was, on the ice, it's easier, because you can, instead of saying something, you can grunt and moan, and people know what you're meaning just by that way. But it was harder to go get milk and eggs at the grocery store than it was to dip the puck on the ice.
What are the players like in Russia? Are they a different breed, or is it harder in Canada than it is in Russia? How would you compare the two?
They're highly skilled. They're very individual. I find that the coaching wasn't as good, and it was getting better every year that I was there, but it wasn't as good. It was more individual than it was team success and whatnot. So that I did see it that way, but they're highly skilled. Some of the some of the most skilled players I've ever seen on the ice are from there. But then, they really don't know how to play the game and join a game. They're good, but they could be, with their skill level, they should be way better.
What about the fans there? What are they like?
They're like the football hooligan. They're good fan. They're loud. They cheer. They have their
passionate.
They have their following team, and it's, as you guys know, it's not as bad as in Canada, but they have their following team, and that's almost a religion. So it can be life and death in some of those rinks.
I can imagine. Probably feels quite heated. Do you enjoy that atmosphere?
I do. I love the animosity. I love being hated by the other team's crowd. I love being hated by the other team. You don't you don't hear the sentence come out of many people's mouths going, I love being hated. And, I really, when I played, I really did. I felt like if they hated me, I was doing my job. So I thrived on it.
Did it make you want to beat them bad? When they're booing you, I'm gonna show them. Do you get that feeling?
Yeah, and sometimes you get the winning goal and you're able to rub it in, but then there's other times when you think you're going to and you don't, and then you're the hero to zero. So you got to walk out with your head down. And
David, I was at the Scotland versus England football match recently with my son, and England beat us, but we had to suffer the English fans. We had to suffer them for the last 15 minutes, and the stadium has 50,000 people, and it's just silent except for the other fans letting us know how bad we are. It's awful. It's just horrible.
And they're having the best time of their lives, and you guys are having terrible time. You just want to get the game over with and leave you.
Get out of there.
And I love that part of the sport where there are times when it gets out of control, especially in that game of yours, football, and it gets out of hand sometimes and people get hurt. But
I think football could learn a lot from hockey. Like, I really like the draft system in hockey, but you couldn't have that in football because all the young players, they're kind of like in youth teams. They get brought in early, and it ends up just being very unfair. The teams with the most money have all the best players, and that's just the way it goes. And also, it's a very short career for them. Even if you do make it as a pro, it can be pretty short. So they don't go to college or university. I think that's like quite a good system, like right across North America, where sports having people study and take part in their sport at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely good, especially because I don't know what other sports, but in hockey we're dealing with a lot of ex-pros that are finding it hard to they have no schooling. They're coming out, they're 30 years old. They don't know how to go to school. They don't know how to go back to school, and they have money, but it's going to run out, and they're struggling, and it's not. They struggle emotionally, and and we're finding that with a lot of the older players that there's some issues that the NHL and hockey over here are trying to go back to the grassroots and figure it out so it doesn't keep going as a pattern.
I can imagine as well, not even just that lack of useful skills outside hockey, but also your life, you're missing the adulation of the crowd now as well. That's something you would experience in every day, and then all of a sudden that stops, and you just have a very normal existence after that.
And sometimes there's no preparation. So some days you go to bed as the guys that everyone watches on the ice, and then you wake up the next day, and whether it's an injury or something, and you never do it again. So sometimes there's no preparation. Sometimes it's out of your control, and the next day you got to wake up and go, now who am I? What am I doing? And it can be difficult. I remember going in, and when you stop playing, you realize that there is a depression about it. You want to be that player that plays forever, but you're not. And I remember talking to one guy, and he said, you know what? It's normal. Wayne Gretzky felt the same way when he was done. Like it's not how much or how good you were. It's all of a sudden what you did for your whole life is over, and now you have to figure out what you're going to do as the next player. Like whether you're successful or not, it's there in your head because you become that used to be the hockey player instead of the hockey player.
Did you find that hard to actually say that to someone? Kind of when you towards the end of your career that you felt a bit depressed about not playing anymore or not having the crowd, or is it easy to talk about?
You know what? I had it a little bit differently because I knew it took me about 5 years without an injury, kind of slowly knowing that it was winding down, and each year I was getting a little bit worse, and outside of the game I was setting up myself to fall into something where there wasn't a big transition from playing to not working to having not enough money, etc. I was lucky because I was able to kind of plan like a 5-year process and prepare myself so I don't think I could have done it if I had to wake up the next day and go, it's over. I think that would have been really hard. I think it would have been, no preparation.
Yeah, I think in hockey as well, it's such a hard sport. You have to be a hard person, and probably the last thing you can show in hockey is any kind of weakness whatsoever. And I reckon it must be hard for players afterwards to say, I'm not feeling very good about my life or whatever, or speak to somebody, because they're probably used to covering up any kind of, you're not going to tell someone you feel sad because it comes across as weak, I would have thought.
Yeah, and you know what? I totally agree, and the only thing I don't agree with is you said hockey. I think it's every man. I think as a gender, we have a hard time expressing how we feel, and if we do feel a way, we keep it to ourselves because people are going to think that we're weak and not strong, and we're supposed to be the gladiator and be like your dad who you never saw cry and whatnot, and be that. Where I think it is changing, and there are places and it's okay to reach out and the people now that are in charge have gone through it and know that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to say I need help, or I'm not happy, and when I need yeah.
I want to kind of skirt around that issue a little bit, because when I watch documentaries of hockey changing rooms, there was one a short one about the Maple Leafs recently, where they were in the changing room, and that seems like a pretty hostile place sometimes, the changing room.
It can be. There's a lot of brotherhood go on there. There's a lot of bonding, but there's also, it's behind closed doors. There can be a lot of stuff go on that no one sees. And there's a lot of heartache, but there's also when everything's going well, it's the funnest place to be, is in that rink with 20 of your buddies joking around and no one being able to know what you're doing in a closed atmosphere. But when things aren't going well or you're in trouble, it's almost like a cage of not being able to get out.
Well, have you ever gone into the changing room, maybe in the intermission, and thought, when that coach comes in here, he's going to lose his head? Has there ever been an occasion where a coach has just come in and just lost it?
Well, I remember, you had these coaches and you start to learn their tendencies and understand what's going to happen. And I remember that we had this one coach, and we had terrible period, and we knew we were going to get shit on. And I looked around, and not one guy had taken their helmet off, which normally they do, because he was coming in, he was throwing stuff and smashing stuff. So it was kind of funny afterwards, and even the coach, after we joked though and took our helmets off because we didn't know what was coming, he even laughed and joked. But those are the things you learn. But they break things, they smash things. But I guess it's 2023 now, so you can't do too much to kids now. You can't say too much, and you can't show too much aggression, whether it's against the wall or anything nowadays. So it's definitely a different time.
I think it kind of changes the sport a little bit, like when the coach there's not kind of fear from, people aren't afraid of the coach, because I think coaches that actually strike a bit of fear in the team tend to do the best. I mean, I think like Alex Ferguson was probably, football coach. For me, the players were terrified of Alex Ferguson, and he had a great team as a result. They did what they were told.
I agree. I think that it's part of it, and it should still be there. It's leaving, but I see it with my teenage boys, that they don't respect me as much. They love me as much as I love my dad, but they don't respect me as much as I respected my dad. And they they have their opinions, and it's just the culture of that age group nowadays that they just don't. They have their internet and they have their thing, and that's it. They don't respect like we used to respect.
Do your kids play hockey?
Yep, both of them do. They're both good. They both have the pros and both have the cons. If I could put them together, roll them down the stairs and put them together, I'd have a really good player. Because they're both of their strong parts are different. One's really skilled, and the other one's really positionally and smart on the ice. So if I could put them together, I'd have a really good one. But now I got two average. Good players.
Is it hard to watch your own kids play hockey?
At first, when I watched them, I would put myself in their body and go, why aren't you doing it this way? But then you have to realize that not everyone's the same, and you just have to kind of give them some direction, and when they ask for some help, give it to them. But you drive yourself nuts if you got mad at each time because they didn't do what you would have done.
When I take my son to play football on a Sunday, and sometimes he gets, hacked down. Someone will, tackle him badly or push him over or whatever, and then he'll say to me afterwards or at halftime, he'll say, "Oh, Dad, that kid pushed me over," and I just say to him, I say, "Well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do?" Because I do think that's the best place to be having problems. Not off the pitch. You have to learn how to deal with problems on the pitch, and it's great learning environment for him.
And I agree. Like my kids will say, "Hey, that guy," and I'll be like, "If you're not going to do something back, don't whine about it."
Exactly.
It's okay not to. It's okay not to do anything about it, but don't whine about it.
Do they aspire to be pros as well, your kids, or are they looking to get into some kind of education? Or
I think all kids want to play pro. The ones I'm around, they all want to play pro, and until they realize themselves that they can't, or we stress that they need to do the school and that they have to be, there has to be something else. Do I think they'll play pro? No. Do I want them to play pro? Sure. But they're going to have a long life, and they better have school to fall back on and have something that they can make a living and raise a family with.
What is there like a business where you live that's like the main industry in that area?
Well, I'm from an island, and it's the main industries are farming and fishing, and I'm no good at either, so I don't know if my kids will be. But the university where they take something and find something they like, whether
I guess the whole way through university you can play hockey. There'll be like pretty good teams for the university, and every university probably has a decent team, does it?
Yeah, but you know what? If you can't just be average. You still have to be a good player to play at that level. So it's not like almost like a consolation. Oh, I didn't make pro, I better go play university. It's not that way. You still have to be above average to play at that university level. It's good hockey, so it's not as easy as that. But there are opportunities.
I mean, I guess the university players, they're going to go on to become the pros of the future, are they?
In Canada, it's like in USA, it's got a different system. In USA, a lot of them do become pros. In Canada, little less. They've already ran the course, but they're getting their school paid for and getting the education through it that way. And then some do end up going pro, but not as many as in the US.
How highly do players regard things like the Olympics?
You know what? I think the Canadian and the American, I know for sure, love being representing their country. I don't think as highly as regarded as watching, the Russians or the English guys that I played with. That I don't think it's the same, but it's still big. Every player wants to play in the Olympics. Every player wants to win Olympic gold. But I think that it's a little different. Like the Russians, I think they get paid to play or paid to win. That doesn't happen in Canada as the US.
Well, they get a lot more to win as well, don't they? They get some steroids as well.
I heard one year when the Russians won the hockey, each player got $1 million.
Oh wow!
Really?
Yeah,
so that's like, but from the government. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Like,
did you see that film, the documentary Icarus? There's a documentary on Netflix about Russia in the Seoul Olympics. I think it was Sochi. And it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. In fact, Netflix got really lucky with this documentary because this guy was trying to cheat a cycle race. So he enlisted a Russian scientist who had designed the drug testing regime. And he said, "Look, can I cheat this cycle race? We're going to document it and everything." And then as the documentary goes on, it turns out that this Russian scientist was involved in doping the entire Russian team, the whole Olympic team, everybody at the Sochi Olympics, the whole team. And he told them how they did it, broke it down exactly how it did. He said, "Go back to London and you'll find all these things in the samples from London." The cheating was unbelievable. And it just made me think, like, I really don't trust them at all in sport. Everybody in the Russian team.
I seen it in the hockey. There were, like 80% of them when I was there were doping. And another thing I learned when I was there is that they take an aspirin by needle. So if they have a headache, they take it by needle. If they because of the stomach issues with pills, they say. So they take if you have a headache, they'll give you a needle with the aspirin in it. But then I didn't realize that doping is anything injected through a needle. So even if you're taking an aspirin and you inject it, and you get caught at the Olympics, or that's you're doping.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, they had an incredible system at Sochi. What they were doing, they had the they're not the KGB, but they're kind of like they have a new name now, and they had this like bottle that you couldn't open. Once it closed, you'd have to break it to reopen it. So they gave it to these KGB people. They figured out how to open it. So what they did was they had a socket in the testing room, and they had somebody in the room where they were testing. So like, when I say a socket, it's like for a plug on the wall. And that was a flap. So what they would do is they'd open it up and they'd put the test pots in there. Somebody would be on the other side of the wall. They'd take them out, tamper with them and put them back in, and then they would be sent away for testing. It was incredible.
Well, I do know, even on my hockey teams in Russia, we had a little, like a tool bucket, and we had clean pee in it with cash. And when they would come in, they would pay the guy testing the money and give them the clean pee, and they would be gone. I seen it. So it wasn't mine, but I seen it. We had, like, that was part of their, and they would pay the refs. And stuff in Russia, I've seen, it's crazy.
It's just a complete waste of time having anybody testing for drugs anyway, then, in that case.
Yeah, like we literally had I think the translator told me we had a $12,000 budget for home games to pay the refs.
Wow.
To get an advantage, not because that was what their job was. But this was bribe money.
Every team's probably doing that as well then, and
I was on a small budget team, so I can't imagine what the big budget teams were doing.
Did you ever experience in a game that the ref had made a decision that just didn't make any sense, and you thought that's very unfair?
Well, I did figure it out that they didn't lean the ice, but they did give you more power play. So you did have the opportunity to have more advantage, but they didn't make technically bad calls. They would just call more penalties against the other team and give you that advantage. Now it's up to you to put the puck in the net, and the home team won a majority, more games in that league than they should have, technically, through the history of hockey in every country, that the home team was winning more games.
Nobody noticed.
But there's reasons not to trust. Like you say, I don't. But I've seen the doping. I've seen the paying the refs. So that would happen in Canada. But would we be put in jail, or?
It would be all over the press, I'm sure, right away. Has there ever been any scandal in Canada with that type of thing?
Well, there definitely has been the odd athlete, but not through an organization as a whole. Like, we've had different Olympic athletes test positive for drugs, for sure, like every other country, but we've never had a problem where it's consistently done, and it's not frowned upon when it does happen.
I had to box a guy. Well, I knew I would have to box him. This is years ago. We were the same weight division, and over the summer, the season's off, and I met him at a show, and he was 10 kilos heavier than me at this show. I thought he'd gone up a division. He'd gone from light heavyweight to heavyweight, and this guy was like a slab of muscle in like 2 or 3 months, And I just thought, man, that's so. So he went in and he fought the Scottish champion, and he just crushed this guy. He'd gone up at 10 kilos, crushed the champion. It was so obvious he was cheating, but there wasn't any testing.
Yeah, no. And when I first started in the NHL, there was no real testing either. And I know for sure, like, there was some drugs going on to enhance their play, make them faster or make them stronger. Or
I was a big fan of Lance Armstrong when he was cycling as a pro, and I just couldn't believe it when I don't know why I couldn't believe it, because his cheating was I mean, that was like he was running a business. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Really,
it was
well thought out.
But then the more you learn about that cycling culture. If you weren't doing it, you couldn't win. So yeah, he was totally 100% wrong, but the culture was, if he,
Yeah, they were all doing it.
and they were all doing it.
You know what's amazing about that is now the riders now are going faster than he was then. You know, what are they doing now? They call it marginal gains, and you know they've made the bike faster, but I mean you can't really be that much faster, I don't think.
But you know what? I see it in hockey. Those kids are faster. I don't know if it's the genetics or the dieting or the technology, but and I mean some of these kids, there's no chance they're taking any enhancement because they're 130 pounds, but they can skate like the wind. So
I think just kind of modern training and the way kids are taught nowadays really helps, because when I see young people now coming in, they come into my shop and they look like Doritos, you know, their whole bodies are like triangles. They go to the gym, they eat healthy. One of the best things that's happened in Scotland is that they had a smoking ban. So, I mean, it used to be that you would go in and every bar and restaurant would just be filled with smoke, you know, and you're breathing all that in. And young people nowadays, they don't, I mean, in fact, they're probably going to ban cigarettes altogether completely.
Yeah, we had that in Canada for years now, where you can't smoke in public and whatnot. But the kids, you said like there's no smoking in bars. The kids here don't go to bars anymore. Like the athletes are so the regimen now is work, eat, sleep. I need a sleep coach. I need a dietitian. I need physio. I need recovery. And then I need to go play again. So it's a 24-hour where we used to, you know, back then there was a culture to go to the bar and have fun and have a party, but work hard on the other times. But now I don't even know if they go. And maybe because of all the video cameras, then, you know, people video them and they'll be shown on the internet.
Tell the boss. Yeah. When you played, David, was there one team that you just fell in love with that you played for?
Yeah, you know what? If you look in my career, I didn't play in the same town very often, back and forth. But the teams I played in Syracuse for 3 or 4 years, and you know, you grow to have friends away from the rink there. Say like that place. I played in Kansas City for 2 years, where I did well on the ice, and when you do really well on the ice, it goes off the ice. I won a championship in Nottingham. I hadn't won a championship anywhere else, and so those are the places and teams that you remember. And I remember when I talk about England, when I did go to England, I was coming from Russia and Switzerland and Finland where there was no English, and I'm coming into England and I'm like, wow, this is somewhat of a relief. Everyone knows my language. So
yeah.
So from day one, it was a good start there. But then we had a great team where we ended up winning a championship, the Triple Crown. So it was memorable that way too.
You mentioned Switzerland there. Were you just were you playing games there, or were you playing with a team there?
No, I played in the team there. It was a town called Bio. It was a bilingual French-German town near Bern, and it's a beautiful spot, small, but again, not a lot of English.
I've been to Switzerland. I had a 1-day trip, and I thought it was the most beautiful country I've ever seen.
It's beautiful. We took a bus up to Davos, which is up in the mountains, to play a game in the snow, and you're looking down and the snow's falling into the valley. And I don't know, those snow globes, when you shake them up, and it's Christmas time, that's exactly what it looked like. I'm like, this is what this is from. And when you're from over in Canada, when we look at the snow globe, it just looks like whatever, but that's what it exactly looked like.
Yeah, their houses are like gingerbread houses. They have all the cows have bells on, and when people say the grass isn't greener on the other side, it's definitely greener in Switzerland for sure.
Yeah,
they have greener grass.
It is for sure.
Yeah, I love it there. So then you come to England, and did you stay in Nottingham then?
Yeah, I spent a year there, and then I came back for another half a year later on.
How does it compare? Because when I've been up to watch the hockey, Dundee play Nottingham, and they play, who did I go to watch? Sheffield, I think. But to me, it's hard and fast. It's really fast paced. And our mutual friend Gary, he said to me, he said, "You haven't seen nothing. You need to come to Canada and watch hockey." How does it compare to you? I mean, did you find it easier, or to me, it looks very hard?
Well, 20 years ago when I was playing, and you hear the stories about the English league, it was a lot of the fighters went there, and it was a lot of fights, and the hockey wasn't unbelievable. But now, as you, as the English or the UK teams are getting recognition in the IHF, and they're getting into the Division A of the Olympics and whatnot, it's just a reminder to show you how much the game is improving. And by the time I got there, the game is, it's not as good as the NHL, it's not as good as the AHL, but it's really good hockey. And there's a lot of the English guys. It used to be an import league that if you had the best import, you'd win. Now it's if you have the best English or the UK guys that complement the imports, then you have the best team. And those players are doing getting a lot better. It's definitely one of the there's definitely worse countries to in hockey, and they come and go from Division A and in the Olympics. So that's their head off.
It's probably, I think, getting enough facilities around, enough ice rinks, and I mean, where I stay, there is, I think, 3 ice rinks within an hour's drive. Where you live, they're probably all over the place.
Yeah, and we do it. And they say that when the game's growing, even when they take these NHL teams and they put them in cities in the U.S. that aren't used to hockey, until you see the kids develop, it's a 20-year process. So it probably was the 20-year process of the growing the game in the UK, and now you're seeing the grapes of the growth that they started, and the reason they started 20 years ago by bringing in the imports that would improve the English and the local guys, and I think it takes that long a time to see the grapes.
So when you played there, you came to Scotland to play?
Yeah, Dundee and Fife, and yeah, it was good. Some of those buildings were old and fun to play in. I like the older. I remember the Fife. In Fife, the boys were like, so there was no give to them. It was hard. It was like playing in a minor hockey rink, but it was fun because the crowd was right beside you, right there.
David, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. But something I always like to ask people, because if you were me and you were doing a podcast and you could speak to anybody in the world, dead or alive, on a podcast, who would you want to talk to?
You know what, I always have a thing for the best, and Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, those the Tiger Woods, those guys. But I think I think the person I would love to talk to the most would have been Michael Jordan.
He was a great player.
Yeah, some people thought he was. I would just like to pick his brain on his cockiness, his charisma, his skill, his work ethic. I admired him as an athlete.
Did you play basketball as well?
5'9". I can't play basketball. No, you shoot around in gym class, but no.
So, David, what does the future hold for you? Are you going to get into coaching in hockey in the future, or what do you see yourself doing?
I'm watching my kids now. I love the game. I don't know about coach, but I definitely will stay in it and help and do some skill stuff. But
you must have a lot that you can pass on to young players.
Yeah, I think that even if they pick 2 things I tell them, I think that you become better. There's some things that you can't learn from the book. You have to learn from experience, and there's whether it's lifting the stick here or doing this or telling a young kid that if you do this, this is going to happen, and if you do this, this is going to happen. And if you haven't done it, good or bad, you're not going to know what the outcome is. And so I think those things, that the experience that you can pass on to to kids, let alone just the skill, is gross in the whole.
If you could go back to a young David Ling and give him a couple of pieces of advice, having gone through your whole career, what do you wish you could tell yourself?
I gave it all, but I think that, you know, I did party a little bit when I was younger, and I think that I would have picked my spots a little bit better. I think that, you know, you have to have fun, but I think there was times where I would have picked my spots better and took the game more serious. I played a game. It wasn't my job all the time. I love playing, but so I think that if I took it a little bit more serious when I was younger, when I'm saying younger, I mean 21, 22, 23, where, you know, you're in the pro level, but you could get that extra level by you know, picking your spot.
Well, David, thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Cool. Thank you so much. Catch you later.
Bye.